Welcome, 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 welcome. We've made it to Fridays. Man, God of Dots back with a special episode of the Audible. If you've been following the show, you know the shoot. This was coming, but this is kind of a detour. Just kind of like a special episode of the Audible tonight. I'm not going to really be focusing in on the NFL talk. We'll pick that back up on Monday, but I kind of wanted to get this out. Based off events very recently. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight and bring attention to and have a conversation about. Let me kind of do this just in case. If not, like I said, it's not going to be a long show because I got to get prepped for the other show. About done with that anyway. But yeah. Okay. How you doing, Miss Murph? As always. Yeah, racism in sports. Question of the day. In regards to that, has racism gotten better or worse in sports? Anybody that thinks that racism is not prevalent in sports is not an underlying issue within sports. Is really either really naive or really ignorant to certain facts and certain information. Um, Now the question, like I said, the question of the day is: has racism gotten better or worse in sports? And it's kind of hard to tell because we live in a different era now. We live in a different era where um, very overt um, forms of racism is seen, especially in sports, but this is society, period. But where it is not as overt as it used to be, people are more in tune and more, especially with the social media era, more have more access to information and see stuff that may have not been caught in years past, may not have been recognized in years past, may not have made national news in years past. Every now and then you're reminded, and there's examples that are out there to just let you know that hey, racism is not just a thing that happens in regular people's lives. It happens in the lives of athletes. But the question, like I said, the question is, has it gotten better or worse? And in my opinion, and you can kind of look at this in a lot of different ways, depending on what sport you're talking about. Is in some ways it's gotten better, but in some ways it's gotten worse. Whereas the overt forms of racism, I'm talking about the Jack Johnson days, the Jesse Owen days, the Jackie Robinson days, that overt form of racism being seen in sports is not as prevalent, but every now and then you're reminded. You're reminded. Hold on for a second. How you doing, Dr. Nikki? Oh, you quick with it. You quick with it. Okay. Hold on. 'Cause I'm not used to having company over here. Let me put this. How you doing?
I cannot with you.
I'm over here. Typically I'm solo dolo. I ain't used to having company, but welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Well,
Um,
thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to see you in a different environment. So I'm gonna refer to you as Dots. Um,
that's
so
fine. That's fine.
so Dots, what made me bring this up in the chat? When was it? About sometime last week. I forgot who you were talking, which team we were discussing.
Mhm.
But Miss Murphy brought up corporate greed, and I said it was an example of racism in sports. I want to harken back to when you were talking about positions, and
Mhm.
we were talking about the people who play in a secondary, and then one of those more specifically um, running backs.
Yeah. Um,
And what made me want to kind of tie those two things together was this idea that you were talking about how, their contracts are different. Um, Most of these, people don't last long with teams. I'm not really sure if I know a lot of running backs that come to mind that are franchise player. I can't think of any right off. And part of it is just me not paying close attention because I just watched the Cowboys. Um, nobody else matters. But that plays into, or that's an example of what racism looks like in sports, because if you notice, most of the people that you named in that show, they were non-whites.
Mm-hmm.
And, the way that I wanted, to connect those two, or what got me thinking about it as I'm rambling, trying to get my thoughts together, was the fact that if there were, non-blacks playing in those positions, then they would offer more money. So like if you look at the positions, it's 11 out there on the team, on the field from on each side or what have you. I bet you if we did like an inventory of the position, and what they're paid, and kind of do like what the medium is, or if whether they were Hall of Fame or what have you, how many years and all that data, whatever, you would probably find that part of the reason why those positions don't get paid as much money is because of the color of the players who are playing in those positions. And there's a value or lack of value that comes along with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was talking about the running backs, and what kind of got me started with the running back situation, as far as like what's going on with them, as far as them not being satisfied with their level of pay. You had an owner, Jim Irsay from Indianapolis Colts, come out and pretty much admonish, kind of slap them on the wrist for why are you guys even getting together and discussing this kind of stuff. And when we're talking about the running back position, with the exception of like Christian McCaffrey, the only non-black guy that I know that actually starts and gets playing time, we're talking about black players. And that stigma with racism is still prevalent in the NFL. The fact that you have to have the Rooney rule, is whereas they have to, if a position opens up, they're required to interview at least two minorities for a position. Not necessarily say they get the job, but the Rooney rule is in place to say, hey, you at least got to interview them. And you know how the good old boy system still works very much in sports, especially in NFL.
Absolutely.
And like people, I don't think, because people think, I think this in general, if you're not watching that closely, you think sports is about who's the best player, who's the best athlete, and that's all that really matters. Not when you're looking at it through the eyes of an owner. An owner, you would think an owner would look at it like that, but a lot of them are not. It's the reason why black quarterbacks had such a struggle getting positions in the NFL, and still having struggles getting positions in the NFL. So racism is alive and well. It's just different. I had Colin Kaepernick for my thumbnail because that's a perfect example of if he was a white player and he'd have took that stance, he'd still have a job. They'd have admonished him, they'd have slapped him on the wrist, probably made him sit out for a year, but he'd have got another chance, because you see it all the time, especially with the quarterback position in the NFL. A lot of washed up, no talent white guys hang around the league just because the owner likes them, not because they can play. When it comes to the black player, especially at positions like the quarterback, you have to be so much more. So much more is expected of you at that position because you're black. When we're talking about white quarterbacks, you never hear them talk about is this guy smart? Can this guy read defenses? Is he a leader? You always see those labels being put on black players.
Or his ethics.
Yeah.
Nobody's digging in his past to see, oh, this guy's been married so many times because he cheats on his wife. Like, nobody's looking at any of those other things that would definitely be up under a microscope for non-white players.
Yeah.
Especially if they want to get them out.
Well, like I said, Colin Kaepernick is a perfect example. This guy, couldn't get back in the league to save his life. And we know why. It's because here was a black man that took a political stance and held to it. And they're whitely, we're going to blackball you. We're going to do it. We're going to whitewash it a little bit. Back in, the Jackie Robinson days, they just flat out told him he was banned from the league. With how social media and the way the world is now, you can't come out and really have that overt racism that you used to have. It's just so much more low key now. I mean, if you're not paying attention, perfect example of that also was the LSU girls basketball team. That situation that happened during the tournament where the young
Yes, with the waving of the hand
yeah
and the pointing to the, that they about to get a ring.
yeah, and how they turned that into they were classless, they were low class. They
Unsportsmanlike conduct, all this
yeah
other kind of stuff.
yeah, but then they kind of glossed over the narrative that the same white player that they was taunting had done that like the previous game. Like we're not gonna, for them it's like, oh, she's cocky, she's confident, but when we do it, it's a whole different stigma and labels being placed on it. I just every now and then when it comes to sports, you're reminded that racism is still real, racism is still out here. As much as you would think it's not as prevalent as it is in the sports world, it really is. You just don't, if you're not paying attention to it, you're not seeing it. You're definitely not seeing it.
Well, that's one of the things that bothers me about even with that situation is that how many times are y'all going to scream at us and use us as examples to say that you should be happy just to be here? Although without you, we can't make the money that we make, but you should just be happy to be here.
Well,
And there's an etiquette and decorum that goes along with that, it's okay if they do it, but you can never do it.
oh yeah, but that's how it's that double standard that we all live by, whether you playing sports or not. It's just magnified sometimes on when we're talking about sports. It's magnified to a higher degree. We have that, even in the corporate world, even in regular work life, you have that. Like, yeah, you got, what's the old saying? You got to work twice as hard to get half of what they have. Like,
Absolutely. They say that even in education, because that I work at HBCUs and I've done the most of my, spent the most of my tenure there. And even as a product of an HBCU, that's what we were told. You all have to do twice as much. I mean, even with my sister, when she went to an Ivy League school for her, a terminal degree, she'd realized that she had twice as many classes in her content area, and still, they admitted her on a provisional basis, and she was, twice as prepared as her white counterparts.
well, that's how the game is played. And it's sad that, as a society, we're still hanging on that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's just, you have to kind of accept the world that you actually live in, not the world that you want it to be. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have those stigmas. We wouldn't have to have stuff put in place like affirmative action. We wouldn't have to have those caveats to even be on the playing field, let alone be equal. Just be on the playing field with them. But like I said, the question I had was like, has it gotten better or has it gotten worse when we're talking about sports? And for me, it's kind of like a double edge. It's not as overt, but every now and then they remind you. Donald Sterling in the NBA, they remind you how they really, really, really feel about athletes. Just have that mind. You would think it's crazy to think that these guys are making you money, but at the same time, they don't look at these players, they don't look at these athletes as people. You're just basically equipment. And I hate to kind of put it like that, but college football, mostly black players are the superstars, but we can't get black head coaches at these schools.
And if you get black coaches at these schools or even on these teams, they only get a season or two to show and prove. Like they don't get the opportunity to build or rebuild, or that 3 to 5 years, like they say in corporate. Like when you're starting a business, you can expect your first 3 years as a struggle, until you start, making money or see a profit. Like they don't have those same opportunities. And we can look at our favorite team and see that play out with the coaches that we've had that I thought, should have. It's like, what are you doing? Like, why? Again, they're my team. I don't trust them until ESPN announces that we won the game. So I
You
don't
know,
care what the score says. I
I
had
mean,
to have it on ESPN. But even still, I wanted to take your premise of, tonight's discussion just a little bit deeper to kind of probe you a little bit, if that's okay.
that's fine.
What share with me your observations in the context of racism with quarterbacks and calls that certain quarterbacks get that others don't. And we can see that there's definitely a color preference there with coverage, or just calls that some people get that others don't. So it seems like some of these non-white quarterbacks really don't have longevity, although they are just as good, if not better, than some of them. Can you talk to me a little bit about, your opinion or your observations with that?
Well, when you kind of put it in that context, it is a touch of racism with that, as far as like, because we know most of the quarterbacks in the NFL are white. Let's not beat around the bush. Most of them are white. Um, and then, they're the ones selling the tickets, per se. They're the ones they want to put out in front. When you watch a football game, it's never this running back versus this running back. When they're talking about the previous, always the quarterback is but it's a touch of racism even with that. It's a touch of racism even with that. Like, hey, we don't want the prize white boys, because let's be honest, that is a position that non-blacks dominate in the NFL, more so than probably any other position on the field. So that they want to protect them and not have them get beat up. But even with that, it touches of racism. I can remember the beating Cam Newton took as a quarterback.
Oh, and Vic.
Yeah, and Vic, the beating they were taking at quarterback, and then the excuse was, oh, you're a running quarterback, or you're an athlete,
Right, you at the pocket, so it's fair game. It's like, no.
Yeah. But when it's come to white quarterbacks, like you can't even breathe on these guys. But black,
You sure can.
I mean, let's just keep it, keep it real. Like Lamar Jackson can take a beating through a football game. It's I know it's got to be a struggle for him to get through a season healthy. Whereas guys such as Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, like you can't even breathe on these dudes. And I think that's by design. But they kind of cover it up. Miss Murph makes a very good point. Like, they're very creative with it. They're more creative with it now, as far as how they take care of their own. I'm just gonna keep it a buck. They take care of their own, and they find ways to kind of do that. No matter how bad a white quarterback plays, he will always have a job in the NFL as long as he wants it. I.e., they go into coach Jason Garrett, our former coach, should have been fired a long time ago, but hey, the owner liked him. And had that been a Mike Tomlin is kind of like an outlier. Black coaches don't get that that rope. They don't get that much leash.
No, they don't.
They just don't get it. Like I said, Ms. Murphy, like I said, she makes a very good point that they're creative with it. And then it's sad, but at the same time, I don't expect anything less. Expect anything less from them when it comes to every now and then they got to remind you, I'm the owner, I'm the boss, and you in shorter terms, you a field nigga. I can talk like this is my channel. I can talk like that. But
well, it's a term that they've used.
Yeah. Or the inmates, we're the inmates running the asylum, as the Houston Texans owner said a couple seasons ago. Like, they remind you every now and then to remember your place, boy. Just not as overtly as they used to.
Right, but even some of the rules that they make, that they enforce, season after season, or new rules or what have you, it seems like they're taken away from the reason why a lot of us like the NFL. Like, you can't turn the NFL into college ball. But it was something else I was going to say. Oh, yes. Another place where we can see racism in the NFL would be the way they started giving out penalties because of the way you celebrate in the end zone.
Yeah, you know why that was, they weren't targeting white players, they were targeting black players. Like, hey, you can't do that. You guys are too flamboyant. Uh, you
Right,
know,
but what positions normally make it to the end zone?
we're talking about running backs, wide receivers, and
Absolutely, most of them are black, so they're the ones that would be down there celebrating, and because it's like, oh my goodness.
Miss Murphy makes the point. Marvel it is outliers, Miss Murphy. But I watch closely. I want you to watch closely. I've been watching this very closely with Deion Sanders in the University of Colorado, and the negative press he's been getting from not only from the media but from his peers. Had that been a white coach coming in and doing the wholesale changes and doing all of that, they'd have been praising him as being innovative. One of the words they like to use, innovative, um, forward thinking. But with Deion, he's brash. You're doing too much. That's not how we do. I mean, this when we do stuff. I mean, it's always labels that come with it. We always have to be.
And they're derogatory, rookie,
Yeah,
naive, things of that. I'm like, what? You're talking about somebody who's in the Hall of Fame.
exactly.
His football acumen is on a level that I'm sure no one at the university has, because there's no program called football.
Exactly. But it's crazy. You have people even doubting this man and being so negative towards him. Like, this is a sorry. It's been a sorry program for God knows how long at the University of Colorado. This guy comes in, like I said, if he'd been a white head coach coming in from a winning program, whether it be a small school or not, you would have never heard anything about his recruiting tactics. You would have never heard any. They wouldn't have him under a microscope.
Wouldn't question it.
One question. It's like, oh well, he's a former legend, and he gets those, gets all of that. Another thing, I would like to see, and what you don't see a lot of is black ownership. When it comes to these sports teams, a lot of times we're kind of frozen out um, of that process. I've had a show earlier this summer. Um, I was talking about Michael Jordan selling his stake in the Charlotte Hornets, and how I get it. It was you made a lot of money, but at the same time, you kind of really closed the door again on us getting back into the ownership on a major level. We have
Absolutely.
we have some blacks who are part of ownership groups, but I can't really count you as part of the ownership group when you have no say so in day-to-day operations or how the organization is really run. You just kind of we took your money, we put you out there as a face, but you're not really calling the shots. I kind of look at how the Brooklyn Nets use Jay-Z to drum up that franchise when they came about. Like, we're gonna put you out here as the face, but you're not making no decisions. You make no personnel moves. You don't. You're not in charge of who gets hired or fired here. But we'll take your money and we'll use your likeness for our advantage. And it's kind of crazy when you kind of really sit back and look at it. But I don't see it changing because like I know owners, even some of these college programs, they're so the good old boy system is alive and well and thriving, and is not, in my opinion, not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. A lot of college football coaches are upset that the players are actually getting paid now through these NIL deals. Like, and the players that's really getting paid is the black players.
Of course. Of course. Well, can we back up to Jay-Z for a second? When I tell you I'm so disappointed in him, and I'm not going to jump down a rabbit hole or a tangent, but I am so disappointed in this man just for the culture. It has nothing to do with, because I have been in some very heated debates about him and his involvement with the halftime show in the NFL and social justice and all this other kind of stuff. And again, this is probably not the place to have that conversation, but I am so disappointed. And it's so deep for me that I don't care about, well, it's a good business move and look at how much money he's going to make, because it's sometimes you do things with some sort of integrity, and you really don't want your legacy to be one of, I sold out for $1, or that I'm for sale and can be bought.
Yeah, I didn't like how he got involved with that. Because to me it was like we're just gonna put a black face on something, and
Not just a black face that you think black people are scared of in some form of fashion because he has street cred.
why don't you think it's him being scared? You look at him as
No, I'm talking about us being scared of him to where we wouldn't, buck the system or protest, or we would be satisfied. Like he's an acceptable person.
well, they
He's hood enough.
when you talk about putting black faces on stuff, um a lot of times they're not banking on us like really looking at the finer details of something. Like they'll make a blanket announcement, Jay-Z is part of the social justice program, he's going to be in charge of the halftime show, and you're not really digging into the finer details of what that really means. A lot of us won't do their due diligence or the research and to find out what's really going on. What does that really mean as a whole? Like, you would think he has quote unquote influence and he's in with the ownership and the league and all of that. Colin Kaepernick still can't get a job.
Right. And it's almost like he just it's almost like in that moment when okay, so first of all, we don't know Jay-Z to do press conferences.
No.
So to me, that was just a bad idea. It's like, dude, you've never done a press release for anything, any major project, anything you and your wife are doing, like nothing. So now all of a sudden you think that you have what it takes to speak on the fly.
Well, he probably,
He looked like a complete fool, Dots, in that
I get
press
it.
conference. He looked like a whole fool because he hasn't been prepped for that type of, vetting. He just was he was ill prepared, and he, in my opinion, walked away looking like a straight up sucker.
Well, in his mind, I got paid. This gives me access to money. This gives me, you know, it became not for the culture, it became for himself. Like, Keeper, welcome to the show, Keeper. She said, he's rubbing shoulder with the big boys. Now he's having access to some of the stuff that they have access to when we're talking about sponsorship deals, all of that kind of other stuff. Like he's not looking at the large picture.
He ain't rubbing shoulders. He's rubbing their heels. He ain't up to the shoulder yet. Okay. As a matter of fact, it might be pinky toe to pinky toe.
Well, I mean, I
get it, but I'm just saying, it's like, if he believes that, my God.
Yeah, like I just can't, I get it and I understand it on the surface, but when you start looking real deep into how they do business, just sports period, how they do business period. I mean, it's very, racially motivated. Like the NBA is very good, as I would say this, allowing black players to, transition into coaching. Because you don't see too many not getting the opportunity to coach, but you don't see a lot of them transition into team president, general manager positions. Like, nah, you coach the players, but we don't really you don't
trust you with the money.
Yeah, we don't trust you with making financial decisions on offering contracts. No, we don't want you in that aspect. You just coach the X's and O's.
Yeah, you will have no fiduciary responsibilities.
Like a lot of NBA coaches, they don't have the luxury of being team president like Popovich. And I like Pop as a coach, but no matter how successful we are as black head coaches, you'll never get that level of power in an organization. It just won't happen. It just won't happen. Not for you to be the head coach and the team president, meaning you're really calling all the shots. You're not going to get that. Not going to get that. And it's on purpose. It's on purpose. Here's a shiny object distraction.
Hold on, I can't see the chat. Let me go to the chat.
That's Miss Merv. She said he is a shiny object distraction. And Miss Merv, a lot of us, and I'm not gonna, individually, some of us are up on game and really see see it for what it is. But a lot of us are not really paying attention. Like, think about like the NFL when they do the mock draft, the pre-draft stuff, when they're talking about certain players in certain position. Well, let's name quarterback is that position. You know, he doesn't know how to read coverages, and it goes back into that mindset. We're not smart enough to be in those positions. You never hear that about white quarterbacks coming into the league.
Oh, let's talk about Johnny Football. Like I can't. Okay, I'm trying to listen,
Go ahead.
Dots. You're doing a good job at training me to stay focused. So I really appreciate you in this space.
No, I mean this particular show. This is a special episode, y'all. This is a special episode. I mean, let's talk about Johnny Football. Get chance after chance after chance. No matter what his background was, no matter what errors he made, we like you because you.
And Tebow.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh, I mean, everything was from the time he was in college. Transition to the NFL, was never a good quarterback.
Oh, horrible.
Went to ESPN, made buku money as an analyst.
Horrible there too.
Yeah, but they take care of their own.
All because he prays.
Yep, we like him. He reminds us of what we're used to. And you see a lot of that in sport, and it's sad to say, but it is what it is. I look at sports as a microcosm of society. The days of overt racism have kind of tampered down, but they remind us. When I say us, the community, they remind us like, hey, we're still running shit. Don't get out of line, boy, or don't get out of line, girl, because we'll find a way to put you back into your place.
Absolutely. Like, here's where the buck stops. We don't care about your talent, your efforts, or any of that.
Do not get it like, hey, the white player, he can go out there and get DUIs, he can be beating on his wife,
kill a couple people.
Hey, he's going through some things, he's having some mental health issues, but let a black player do something remotely like catch a speeding ticket. He's a thug.
And a risk to the entire franchise, the history.
No, he doesn't represent the organization well. Like I remember Brett Favre being a whole damn junkie.
Exactly.
being a whole junkie, and playing, continue playing long after. Hey, harass a woman. Hey, we'll find a way, for you to get paid in some form or fashion. Like we'll look over all of that. Like dude was a whole junkie, hyped up on painkillers for years. whole junkie, admitted junkie, and was like, you know what? Instead of taking this man out the league, say he needs some help, go back and get some treatment. If you're ready to come back, we'll take a look at it. Kaepernick took a knee, and they make this man jump through hoops to even have tryouts.
And he's clearly
was able to, to still play in the league at the time. Like we're just gonna stall him out. Like we're not gonna. We'll bring him in for a meeting, just to say, we tried. I mean,
right. It's all about the performance. We'll perform like it was something, and and make it look good and what have you. I mean, that did a better job than the whole Jay-Z thing that we were just talking about. But even still, it's kind of like, at what point in time are we going to, get, I don't know, have those tough conversations to where we can actually have some kind of change that's meaningful, not something that's just another Band-Aid.
That is a good question, because I look at, and I'm just going to kind of keep it in sports for right now, because we can go down a whole different path.
Absolutely. But it's good that you're talking about what racism looks like in sports, because of course it looks different in education, it looks different in industry and what have you. So I was really happy that you kind of bit that little nugget I threw out.
Well, I like to engage in intelligent conversation every now and then, outside of the norm of X's and O's and stats and that kind of stuff. I look at the NFL. I look at a lot of these players' associations, not really looking out for the interests of the majority of of the players. Meaning,
That's a great point.
you know, you would think the NFL Players Association, you would think they would develop some kind of level of power to where they can ask for more and not be just having to take what the owners are giving. Because one thing about the owners, when it comes time to do the new CBA and all of that kind of stuff and divide up the TV money, they're on code. They're on code. They're together. It's no breaks in them.
None whatsoever.
But with us, it's not the same. It's not the same when we're looking at the majority. It's just not the same. I think, for me, the NFL Players Association is weak, and it's sad because it's a lot of blacks are in high-ranking positions within the Players Association. You would think they would be fighting for more as far as like player rights, making sure players are taken care of long term. No, not. They're just going to take what they, because I mean it's that fear. I'm here. I'm a good boy. I've made it this far, and damn those I left behind.
So are you inferring that the Players Association is kind of like charged with keeping people on code?
You would think they would be on code like this, like the NFL.
No, I'm talking about on their code, not a code for the players. I'm talking about code, the NFL's code.
Yeah. I think they work too closely with ownership. I don't feel sorry for any team owner. I mean, we're talking about guys that are billionaires times over. But you still got guys in the NFL who will risk life and limb to play a game, and some of these guys are not even making $1 million a season.
And that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. And then there's no aftercare. There's no nothing. There's nothing.
That stuff kind of like they've been like kind of putting that stuff in place, but for so many years it was just like, hey, once you out the league, you're on your own. They got some stuff in place, like when you would kind of really look at the CBA, it's some stuff in place now, but they should have been doing that kind of stuff. They should have been doing that kind of stuff. Like I look at even, let's say, college football. I thought players should have been getting paid. They sell it. I'm the reason, and I'm thinking in the mind of a player. I'm the reason you have this nice stadium. You can afford these nice facilities that you have on your campus because I play. You make a lot of money off my likeness. You make a lot of money off my jersey. And damn that argument. We gave you a scholarship. What I'm giving you and what you're able to earn off of me is way more than any kind of scholarship you can give me.
Absolutely. But again, what the problem is cutting out the middleman, because wherever these star players go, that's where these sponsorships come in, and they give the money to the schools, which enables them to pay these coaches these outrageous salaries.
Well, I mean, it's business. For them, it's business. You bring in these guys, we get the TV money, which we're talking about billions of dollars. A lot of these conferences have their own networks. You got the national stuff, but like the SEC, they have their own TV network that they got deals with. I mean, I'm glad the players are getting NILs now that they're able to kind of get some form of compensation. But this, I don't know how long that's going to last, because all it's going to take for some player to get too large of an NIL deal, and they're gonna be like, oh no, we can't do this anymore. We got to go back to what we used to.
That's interesting.
Because
what kind of money are we talking about? Now that's something I don't know because I don't follow college football.
Okay, well, with the NIL deals, which is kind of like
I know what they are, but what kind of money are we talking that the players are now getting?
It depends on the talent level of the player. Really, not all players are getting it. Only certain players, more like highly touted 5-star type players. And that's becoming part of the recruiting process. When you look at it now, it's like no longer it's like between the superpower team, Alabama or Georgia, like who's going to offer me a good NIL deal,
And see, that's only going to further hurt HBCUs because they can't compete on those levels.
Exactly. Um,
They can't compete on those levels. Even if you're a champion, even if you win even if you're D1, even if you win your conference, it's like we can't even compete.
well, it's part of the reason, when you followed, Dion's story from Jackson State, like, as much notoriety as he brought them, the money just wasn't coming. It was like, we refused to really put, money into that program. Um, no matter how big a name you are, like you ain't one at these Power Five schools, we not paying you. And I was like, you know, like catching up on his story, like he came out of his pocket for a lot of stuff that they had. You know,
Right, but it's like you can't. Okay, so these schools don't have it. I mean, like, so one of my responsibilities is, working with, getting grant dollars and what have you. So, most of my publications are, would be considered, grants. Like, I submit grants and narratives and all that other kind of stuff to, National Science Foundation, National Endowment for the Humanities to get, money for these schools and what have you.
mhm,
Because most of them are tuition driven.
mhm,
So you can't expect a school that has maybe 5,000 students to be able to put 2/3 of their budget towards athletics because you have a Deion Sanders. Now, I'm not
yeah,
saying he's not worth it, and that's not my argument with any of this stuff. I'm
mhm,
just saying this is just a reality because most of the brightest and the best black talent goes to these other schools that do have money because they have people and other star athletes giving back. Like Michael Jordan gives a lot of money to UNC Chapel Hill and they don't even need it.
yeah. I
You
mean,
got schools like Duke and Harvard that have $1 billion endowments. It wouldn't matter if another student enrolled and paid tuition. They don't even need that money.
yeah. I mean, I like
And it's like,
University of Texas is one of the biggest is when we're talking about boosters. All that oil money that has been pumped into that school, and Oklahoma's and the you would think Alabama. And I don't know if you've been to Alabama, how poor that state is. You would never be able to tell looking at the football.
no, what? Roll Tide? What?
You would like, damn, like most of the state lives below the poverty line, but you would never know if you step on the campus.
Never know it. I mean,
You,
that school is like Disneyland in the middle of the state.
I mean, I can recall I went to a Auburn football game, and I was like, it's nothing in this goddamn city. Everybody is living
Nothing.
poor, but unless you are a student here at this university. Like you guys have a large ass stadium, multi-million-dollar stadium, and everybody around this city is living poor. Like,
That's the same thing for Clemson. If you go to upstate South Carolina, go to Clemson, there is nothing there but that school. Nothing there. That's why a lot of people who, the school has a very good program, but a lot of people go visit and it's like, oh, there's nothing in this town. You're exactly right. So all you're gonna do is Clemson.
yeah, but the money, but I'm like I said, as far as like the NIL, I'm glad certain players are getting it, but I think it's going to only last so long. It's going to be one player that's going to be asking for a little bit too much money, and they're going to give him his Negro wake up call. Like you are not that important. You are not that valuable. We can find 100 more of you somewhere else. We like you, but we don't like you at that price. So you
Could you
know.
be a little bit cheaper?
Yeah, I mean, hey, we'll take instead of you being a 5-star, we'll take a 4-star. That'll be more than happy to come here, ride the bench, may never get on the field. Don't worry about it. Like that's part of the issue. Um, some people had with Deion going to Colorado, the NIL money that was going to be flowing into that university, just because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them had a problem with that. Like, what has he done to deserve that kind of money being pumped into that program? You could say the same for a lot of these football programs.
Absolutely. And all you can do is say, hey, well, we'll see. But I tell you what, I bet you he will only be able to have one bad season.
Well, I think they'll give him at least three. I think they'll give him three. just for the simple fact that they want. It's really a shot at the HBCU. I think they'll give him 3 seasons. If he's not successful at some point in those 3 seasons, they'll be like, hey, this is why picking guys from HBCUs, those head coaches, they don't coach at the same level as a Power 5 school. So,
well, let's do a friendly wager on that. How about $2?
$2. I say $2. $2 say he make it past 3 seasons.
And I'm gonna say $2 to say he won't.
Okay. Not a problem.
If the season now, so this is based on numbers.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if he have a winning season, of course, they're gonna keep him there.
Yeah.
Because my thing is this: if you knew that Deion was looking to coach a team to begin with, why didn't you go get him before he went to Jackson State?
Well, you know why? Because as much as we like Deion, he don't have a track record. I mean, just think about this. Think about this. Deion had to jump through hoops to prove to people he could coach at a HBCU. Jeff Saturday was a damn ESPN analyst, former Colt player. He had only coached at the high school for a couple years. Ended up being a damn head coach of an NFL football team last year because the owner liked him. Let that sink in. If you don't think it is real, is very real. And they got around the Rooney Rule because he was just an interim head coach last year for the Colts. They didn't have to interview anybody else for the position.
And see, and that's how they're going to backdoor a lot of people. If we bring them in as interim, then we're not breaking any rules. Again, man, this is so, oh my goodness.
Jeff Saturday was a high school football coach for, I want to say, 3 years. Had never coached at the college level at any position. Wasn't an assistant coach, nothing. Was an ESPN analyst and turned out to be a head coach of the Indianapolis Colts last year because the owner felt comfortable with him. He was one of his boys.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And they're making Deion, and Jeff Saturday was a good football player, but he wasn't prime. He wasn't Hall of Fame. All of that means nothing. When they want to circumvent something, they'll find a way. Ms. Murphy, exactly. Ms. Murphy, creative. A lot of people didn't know that about the Rooney Rule because a lot of people were wondering how did he get the job, and they didn't interview anybody because it was an interim position. They didn't have to interview anybody. He could have just hired anybody he wanted. He could have hired his grandson to be the head coach of the football team, and it wouldn't have mattered. It's his team. He didn't have to interview anybody. Now they had to go through the whole process once the season was over. But if it was done during the season, they could put anybody in that position. Record be damn, resume be damn. Then when you look at Deion was successful at HBCU, and they still looking at him like he has to prove himself.
Well, we'll see. Y'all heard the $2 bet, so.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna win. I think I'm gonna win that bet. If you're not following, I don't know if you follow Max's sports channel.
No.
Yeah, he has a sports channel, Buff Nation Daily, where all he does is follow the University of Colorado and Deion and all that kind of stuff. And he's doing very well with his channel. But he's following. That's the only team he's following for the college football season. So that's how I kind of keep up what was going on with Colorado in that sense.
Okay, well, I will subscribe just at upon your suggestion, but I really feel comfortable and confident about winning this $2, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to have you autograph it, so that means you have to mail it to me, and I'm going to frame it.
Not a problem.
As far as me winning this bet,
okay, well,
a black bet.
let me kind of, because I need to start wrapping up my show because I got to get ready for
of course. And I was gonna say, just a segue to that. Yeah, you got me in a lot of trouble, but I appreciate it.
Well, you know how it is. My show is dangerous over there. But I don't hold hands, and people are free to do what they want to do. Trust me, it's been brought to my attention when people have made their appearance on my show. Like, man, I had so much fallout. People said, like, that's not my fault.
But I don't care about none of that. So go ahead with your close out.
Okay. Well, let me get your opinion on this.
Okay.
You tuned in this week for the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
You're a diehard Cowboys fan like myself.
Mm-hmm.
grown man just came into the building. What's going on, grown? And I know Miss Murph is a diehard Eagles fan. Do you see the Cowboys winning the division?
Yes, I do. How about them Cowboys? I see them winning the division on all levels.
Now it was tough.
Best offense, defense, secondary, whatever category. Yes, we're winning all of it.
We match up well, Philly fans. We match up well. We match up. I said this yesterday when I was doing the Cowboys breakdown. No way Dak can be as bad as he was last year. No way. And he was bad.
And I'm scared to co-sign that, but yes, because I need to see what they say on ESPN.
I mean, he led the league in interception. I don't see him doing that again this year. I like the pieces that they brought in. It allows us to compete with Philly. I think we're gonna be playing them 3 times next year. When I really kind of break down the conference, I think we'll meet them again in the playoffs, possibly with a chance to the Super Bowl on the line. And Lord knows, I would love to come on the air and say that the Cowboys got to the Super Bowl and they beat the Eagles to do it. Oh, that would just bring me so much. I'm sorry, Miss Murphy. I know you're a long-time supporter of the show, but it would bring me so much joy to my heart if we beat y'all to get to the Super Bowl. I'm just
Miss Murph, my glasses are not rose colored. Even my glasses are blue. Even the sorority organization I belong to is blue. So if it ain't true if it ain't blue.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm doing AFC East next week. I know you'll be in attendance some form or fashion. What I want to kind of do on Fridays, and I'm always open to suggestions for the show. Fridays, I want to kind of like do a freestyle topic. You know, not necessarily. I mean, because we talked about racism in sports, but there's other conversations we could have. I think an idea I have for next week, maybe for Freestyle Friday, is, you know, do we expect our athletes to be role models? You know, that old conversation.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. So
and how do we define that?
We'll chop it up Friday. We'll chop it up. I'll kind of work on, you know, some talking points for that. But I think that's a conversation to be had because, you know, even though it's sports, it's a microcosm of our society. You know, they look at, you know, athletes in that old Charles Barkley. I'm not a role model, but, you know, in the eyes of young people, you know, they're watching you more so than they're watching the teacher or the professor or the doctor or the dentist or the mechanic. They're watching you a lot more. So, you know, is it right to expect you to be a role model? But we'll kind of dive into that next week.
Okay, well, I think a good bit of evidence to have with that is to see if we can find somewhere like their actual ethics clause.
I can what I can do for that show, because, you know, I hate, you know, we're going back to this, but the NFL has a you know, they do like an off-season program for rookies coming into the league. A lot of that has to do with ethics and you know, behavior and expectations of how you're supposed to present yourself to the public. It's kind of like you're teaching them to be role models for your organization. So we can kind of, I can, you know, take some of those guidelines, research that, and kind of bring that to the conversation.
Well, there's a difference between a role model and a mascot or an ambassador. So I'll look at that myself.
They say role model, but
right, I know, but you're saying they were teaching them to be role models, and I argue they're probably teaching them to be ambassadors of the organization. Because even the, you know, managers and on up, they're not even role models. So it's like you can't expect somebody to be something.
Well, I mean, but the reason why I say role model, because they expect them. I don't know how. Like I said, you know, a lot of organizations really want their players to be in the community that they play in. So ambassadors, role models, yeah, potato.
No, it's not semantics. There's something a whole lot different than that. Like it's really not. But we can next Friday. It's on.
With next Friday, we'll do it Freestyle Friday, and we'll kind of see if we can make that a regular part of the channel over here. As we kind of move forward with stuff, I want to kind of get into maybe a future episode. Kind of take a closer look at LeBron James' school. You know, that a lot of that has been making the news, but I want to do more research into it before I kind of jump out the window sounding like Umar. That's just me.
Okay, well, I will not be present when you sounded like Umar, but you do know it's Leo season.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, Dots, I'm gone. I'll see you on the other one.
Okay. Appreciate you coming through as always.
No, thanks for having me. You're always such a gracious host.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Like I said, I got to get ready for that because interesting.
Am I on the porch?
Yeah. The porch is going to be interesting tonight because I have.
Oh Lord. Okay, well, I'll get my information from you because I don't go elsewhere.
Okay. Yeah. I'll make sure
Later.
to break it down for you. Okay. Appreciate it. All right. Yeah, we're gonna kind of wrap up tonight's show. Appreciate everybody for coming out. I want to thank Dr. Nikki for coming up and joining me on the panel where we had this discussion. Thank you for those that kind of came through, stopped in, made themselves known. If you're watching this on the replay, like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff is always appreciated. Yeah, I gotta kind of get ready for the other stuff because there's some stuff I gotta. Those that know, because some people watch my show don't know what I'm talking about, but those that know. Next week, like I said, housekeeping. AFC East, we'll be starting that on Monday, looking at the AFC East. Much like the NFC East this week, if you caught all the shows, I can make a case for a lot of those teams, at least 3 in that division, to possibly be winners of that division. I can make cases for them based on the moves that they made this offseason and all that kind of good stuff. Well, we'll get that on Monday. Probably next Saturday, I want to kind of get in a college football special show before the season kind of kicks off. I want to say the season kicks off August 26th, the first D1 games. I would say that first D1 games are on August 26th, and kind of get into the college football preview. But anyway, thank you all for coming out. Remember, like, share, subscribe, thumbs up, thumbs down. It's always appreciated. Leave comments. I try to respond back in a timely fashion, but you know how stuff goes. And I'm gonna leave you with the phrase that pays over here. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but every time you learn. And I'm out.